soon do you want the Department of Education to be closed?
Oh, I'd like it to be closed immediately. Look, the Department of Education's a big con job. We're ranked, so they rank the top 40 countries in the world. We're ranked number 40th, but we're ranked number one in one department, costs per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. If we're ranked number 40, that means something's really wrong, right?
Something is really wrong. Well, President Trump has vowed to dismantle the Department of Education because he knows that, like many other government agencies, it's become less about education and more about the whims and the wishes of the almighty teachers' unions. We've got students who continually underperform and can't read at grade level or write or do math. We've got a problem. And since we dump so much money into education, we not only have a problem, we have an expensive problem. So yeah, maybe there's another way. Here to break it down, somebody who's very passionate about the issue, working at the grassroots level, is American Federation for Children's spokesman, Walter Blanks Jr. All right, I saw you on Fox News and you got my attention, because you're very obviously well-spoken, but you have a personal connection to this. So before we dive into Department of Education and everything that needs to be done and, hopefully Secretary Linda McMahon, I want to talk about your backstory and tell me and my audience that's not familiar with your story why this is so important to you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be here and talk about this issue. So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, where I often say I was surrounded by poverty, crime, and low expectations. I was in a different public school almost every year, sometimes in the middle of the school year, and I was severely bullied. And my parents worked very hard to ensure that my entire family, all of us, were taken care of, lights on, clothes on our backs, and there were 6 of us. And so that was not an easy thing to do. And so it was really the final straw for my parents when my mom got a call from the principal's office that I had been involved in a fight, which was pretty normal that at that time. And so she came in, I'm sitting in the principal's office, I have a bloody nose, bruises, and the principal tells her, he said, if you just give us 5 years, we'll have the middle school turned around and the high school turned around, and Walter will be able to thrive. And my mom said in 5 years, Walter will either be in jail or in a body bag. And we don't have time for either of those things. And so after some research, she found out about the school choice program in Ohio. And quickly, very quickly, I found myself in a small private school where not only did I begin to thrive academically, but I began to love my learning, my classmates. And so it took some time to get caught up, and it was really, really tough. I was watching my friends, at recess, outside playing, and I was inside deep into a book of some sorts. And so you fast forward a little bit, I fell in the Seine River with one of my best friends in Europe in the middle of February, played sports, instruments, everything. I was just exposed to a completely different world. And so I realized that not every kid had that same opportunity. And I went on to graduate high school, college, which statistically was not the expectation in my community, and really began to dive deep into what school choice was about. I didn't understand that there were actual policies that allowed me to do that and people fighting for it. And so the rooms just kept getting bigger that I would speak in and engage in. And after graduating college, moved to DC full-time, where I joined the American Federation for Children. And 6 months after joining, fresh out of college, I'm sitting next to President Trump talking about the impact that school choice has had on my life. And he asked me, what did I want to do now that I've had this great education? And I looked at him square in the eye and told him that I was coming for the White House. And all of these experiences were because of my educational journey. And so I've really taken that to heart. And for the past 6 years, have been really fighting at a full-time capacity to ensure that the children are not being forgotten. When we talk about school choice, there's a lot of adults in the room playing politics, which I don't have time for. I don't tolerate that at all, because while we're having these conversations, even today, kids are still falling through the cracks every single day. And so I'm very passionate about this issue. And now I have a son who's 11 months old, and we're looking at schools in Nashville, and they're not great. They're not great at all. And so my wife and I are trying to figure out, how can we ensure that he has every single possible option, just like I did?
A lot to dig in here. I want to start at the top. So when we hear school choice, it seems like something that everybody should be for. The left loves choice, you'd think. The left also likes to talk about serving underserved communities, minority communities. They talk a lot about that, and they talk a lot about education. They are really upset right now that President Trump is saying we need to reimagine the Department of Education. That gets them very fired up. So it's very odd for people like myself who don't have kids. When we hear school choice, even if we don't have kids, we're like, yeah, that just seems like a great thing for everybody. And I'm actually surprised that the left doesn't want to spearhead this, give people an opportunity to excel. So when you hear the pushback from the left, from Democrats, from maybe nonpartisans against school choice, what's the loudest talking point that you're hearing from those groups?
It's by far this idea that school choice is draining funds or taking away from the public education system. And I always say school choice is only a problem until it's someone's kid, right? If who, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be Democrat, Republican, millionaire, it doesn't matter. You will not willingly send your child to a school that does not work. And it only becomes an issue when those who are opposing school choice are like, wait a minute, like this school is not good for my child. And we've seen across the country, not only does school choice save the taxpayer dollar because every single program in the country is less than what the state is funding per pupil for the public school kids. And more often than not, these kids are getting a better education because when parents are invested, they're picking the school, they're finding what's working, they're thriving. And once again, across the country, these programs are being allocated at the state level. So even if that kid leaves, the public school that they leave is still getting federal dollars, they're still getting local dollars, and that kid's not there to be educated. And so actually when families exercise school choice, the public schools that they leave actually go up in per pupil spending because there are still dollars that are going there, even though that kid isn't there.
But the dollars might not make the difference. As we've seen, we pour a lot of money into education, but if you've got a failing school with a failing administration and low expectations, you're not going to get students who are engaged, and you're not going to get students who are able to fulfill the potential that I believe is God-given. So it's frustrating that there are so many people against this. But to your point, COVID's a great example. All these people that were standing up for the teachers' unions and wanted the schools closed and they wanted people in masks or remote learning, by and large, all those people, including California Governor Gavin Newsom, they were sending their kids to private schools. They were not sending their kids to remote learning public schools. I can't imagine any of these leaders, and let's just use California as an example. The schools are notoriously bad, the public schools in California. The people that have resources are not sending their kids to LA Unified. They're not, because it's dangerous and it's underserved. And it's not for lack of funding. It's for lack of competitiveness, and they're rewarding it. So going back to the original premise of your zip code not being a determination of your success or your ability, what have you found in working with your federation with kids that have been able to experience what school choice has done for them? What are some stories you can tell us about the growth you've seen?
Yeah, we've seen great, incredible success. The first few years that I was working with AFC full time, my main job was to travel the country and collect success stories, and got to meet with school administrators, parents, students, and they loved it. We have on our website around 1,000 success stories from across the country, which there are hundreds of thousands more that we haven't collected. But one thing that I was hearing from parents is that they felt empowered, right? They felt that they were in control of their child's education, that they had help, they had resources, and no one knows their child better than a parent. Most certainly not a distant bureaucrat in Washington or in the state legislature who, once again, would not dare send their own children to some of these schools that kids are just stuck to simply based off of where they live. I've met with many students. One of my colleagues, actually from Florida, she was born addicted to drugs and really struggled in school, and a rough upbringing, rough environment. And she had a teacher in the public schools who went to teach at a private school and really encouraged her to essentially follow her to this private school. And it made all the difference in her life. And now she's leading AFC's fellowship program, where we take college students who've benefited from various programs from across the country and teach them not only to be strong advocates, but understand the very policies that impacted their lives so that they can go and testify before state legislatures. And one of our fellows has testified before Congress, and they're all in like different walks of life. Some are doctors, some are in the military, some are excited about policy. And it really goes to show that when children have a great education, there is no limit to what they can become. And why would we not want an educated population, right? That is the way that we secure America's future, is third grade, is fourth grade, is eighth grade, all of these things. And by and large, most families have just been told to wait. And if it doesn't work, then just tough luck.
Yeah. For all the discussion and opportunity, you'd think this would be paramount for every American, regardless of political party. I want to talk too about some of the other underlying issues. You mentioned the school that you grew up in, the public school. It was violent, it was dangerous, you were getting bullied, there were fights happening, you weren't academically succeeding the way that your potential would warrant. What do you think is the root cause of a lot of that? We like to talk about root causes, but when we're looking at some of these schools, these public schools that are failing, that kids don't want to be at, what do you think it really is that's a problem there?
I think the two things that I would say are lack of accountability and lack of competition. We see all of that in all of these other markets, right? Even just outside, right? There's not one type of car in the parking lot, right? I spend 30 minutes on Netflix trying to figure out what to watch and end up watching Seinfeld, over and over and over again. And so when these public schools don't have an incentive to improve, knowing that they will collect their paychecks, they'll get their funding. There are some superintendents across the country who make more than their state governor, regardless of how students are performing. And we've seen administrative bloat skyrocket, especially coming out of the pandemic, while public school enrollment has actually gone down. And so the funding is just not matching up to what is actually needed. And so one thing that I hear a lot about with school choice is that there's no accountability, which I think parents are the ultimate form of accountability. If a school is not working, they have the ability to pull their kid and go elsewhere. Where with the public education system, the argument is we just need more money, regardless of the outcomes, regardless of what happens. And so those two things combined, I was getting knocked on, beat up all of the time in school, all of the time. And nothing changed. Absolutely nothing
So when
changed.
this was happening to you, because I want to dig into this, I went to school in South Dakota at a public school, right? So my experience is obviously completely different being in a smaller state. So my experience, if there was somebody fighting, like that just would not be acceptable. Like if people are not allowed to fight, like it would be broken up. We had school resource officers, we had whatever, like it just wouldn't fly.
Right.
But I see footage from all around the country of kids with their cell phones out recording like world star videos of people beating the crap out of each other. Elementary school, middle school, high school, and it feels like nobody is intervening. And I know that this might not be necessarily a discussion about school choice and Department of Education, but what's going on here? Why were you allowed to get beat up?
Right,
Where
right.
was nobody stepping in?
Yeah.
Was it just a lack of care and concern, or what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I remember getting detentions because I was late to class because I was hiding in the bathroom in a stall, right? And this was a normal occurrence. My mom would come up and have conversations and all of these things, and nothing would seem to change. And so from an administrator's perspective, I don't know how you solve that. Maybe you could talk about culture issues and all of these different things when you have a massive school and all these kids come in with all kinds of lived experience and all of these different things, but like you said, kids recording videos of other kids get to be like where's the courage, right? Where's the courage to stand up and protect your fellow classmates versus just pulling out your phone and recording, which I think is a separate issue that would take a long time to unpack, just where we are as a society. But right now we have a key opportunity to pull kids out and put as many kids on life rafts as we possibly can. And school choice will do that. But we also have to address these issues in these schools that are actually going on. And once again, it goes back to that accountability issue where a principal who's making six figures, right, regardless of how the school is doing, how the school is performing, and we're just not seeing that widespread change across society for the public education system, which is why President Trump, Secretary McMahon, is so passionate about getting rid of a lot of this bloat so that the states can actually figure out what's going on in these schools. Because even we could pass the most comprehensive school choice at the state and national level, majority of the kids are still going to be in public school.
Right.
And so we have to figure out what does that look like and how we can hold these administrators responsible. And in my case, teachers were just under the impression that I could not learn like the other kids. I would not have the same success that they would have because I was coming from a troubled home. I was having all of these issues. They just thought I could not learn the same way that the other kids could. So why even bother? We'll just pass them along and probably graduate them reading on a fourth grade level, which is what we're seeing in our country today.
Wow. Well, it's apathy, and it's just, there are so many teachers that care so much. But then you have teachers that maybe are not the best at their job. You know, maybe they're there for other reasons. We don't know. But we got to get to the root of the problem here because we're spending a lot of money on the problem and something's not working. And then COVID just expedited all of the failure. I mean, you take kids out of school and school is dangerous, but for some kids, home is more dangerous. So you plop them at home and you give them a computer and you expect them to learn in that environment, or you send them back to school with a mask on their face. I mean, it warped people's minds, and you take away extracurriculars from kids that need extracurriculars. Some kids go to school for the extracurriculars, and you know what? That's okay. If going to school so you can be eligible to play sports or do band or whatever, if that's what gets you in the classroom every day, I'm fine with it. And I think that's an important element of this as well. When you look at Donald Trump saying, I want to dissolve the Department of Education and I want to empower the states to be able to handle this issue, do you think it's possible? Like, are we on that track?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one thing that President Trump has proven time and time again is that anything is possible, right? There's nothing that's not on the table. And so he not only campaigned on school choice, was very, very proud to support school choice in his first term, but he's looking at all the angles, right? You look at whether it's getting rid of bloat or dismantling it completely, like whatever that looks like to President Trump, everything is on the table. And he understands that now is the time to act. For far too long, since the Department of Education was created in the late 70s, we have seen academic outcomes go down the drain. And so we continue to spend more, and it seems like the more we spend, the lower our results are. And so he's looking at everything. And so I believe that there is definitely a path forward to ensure that states have more control, more autonomy over what's going on in the classrooms within the education system. And one thing I'm seeing a lot on social media and in conversations, people are saying, well, the Department of Education was not designed to educate children. And I was like, yeah, all I have to do is look at the NAEP scores to confirm that. And a lot of people don't understand that getting rid of the department does not mean eliminating all of its functions, right? We are able to delegate these to other departments to ensure efficiency, get rid of bloat, and potentially pay teachers more, right? Have more resources at the state level to ensure that children are not falling through the cracks. And so I'm very excited to see what President Trump and soon to be hopefully Secretary McMahon come up with. But I believe, and I said this in a TV interview, that everything should be on the table because we can no longer continue down this path and expect children are just going to magically turn the corner and start improving.
There was also a lot of fear mongering that if you take away the Department of Education, you won't have lunch programs and you won't have special education. Now, to my knowledge, there is no ideal world here where President Trump or soon-to-be Secretary Linda McMahon would want to take away school lunch programs or special education. I haven't seen that in the agenda, but maybe you can dispel some of that.
So one thing that McMahon talked about during her confirmation hearing was that the president is not planning to pull funding in any crucial aspect of what the department is currently doing. That's not the goal at all. Now, you have some people who like to play politics and try to trap and change the narrative, but the whole goal is to get rid of spending where we do not need it, right? DOGE got rid of like a $800 million contract that the department was paying for that was studying, like they were doing research on research of people that people weren't reading or something ridiculous like that, or like mail centers and like all these different things. And so, yeah, we need to get rid of all of that. And not just in the department, we're seeing that in a lot of different departments at the federal level. And so the monies will simply be reallocated or go to various other departments that, in my opinion, could do that function more efficiently. And then you're talking about block grants for states to be able to spend this money in a little bit more of an efficient way. And then there's also the Educational Choice for Children Act, which Congress, I've been, tweeting and all the social media stuff hard for Congress to get involved with this. And it would essentially be a federal school choice tax credit. So we've seen across the country, various states do tax credits and it works, right? And once again, empowering parents to be in the driver's seat of their children's education. But aside from school choice, we need to have a serious conversation on how we educate children moving forward. Our education system has not changed since its inception. And so children are not learning the valuable tools that they need to go out into this new society that we're in, whether it's AI or IT or all of these new things that we've created. And if I were a kid in school, I would be so excited to learn about robotics, coding, things that actually made sense to me that I could actually go out and do, versus, the Pythagorean theorem or whatever the case may be. And so our education system needs a massive overhaul to reflect the society that we're living in today.
Maybe less emphasis on pronouns and, trying to dissect your cultural or gender identity. Maybe a little less on that and a little bit more unifying things like reading, writing, and math. Because guess what? No matter what race you are, gender you are, sexuality you are, reading, writing, and math is going to be important in your life. Last thing I want to talk to you about. I have a concern that there are a lot of parents, especially because of COVID, that have decided that they can't trust schooling in general and they want to homeschool. Now, I don't judge anybody who wants to put their kid in homeschool. If you have the resources to do it and you have the ability to do it, that's great. Like empowering parents to do it if they want to do it. I just don't want it to be the last resort. I don't want people to feel like they have to homeschool because they can't trust the public school or they can't trust the charter schools, the private schools. Because in my opinion, you do need some kind of socialization outside of your home to grow as a human being too, outside of just the academics. So in terms of homeschooling, I know that that's kind of part of the school choice conversation, but do you see, any trends that worry you as far as people pulling their kids out, just putting them in homeschooling as their only option in their mind?
Not from that perspective. I see a lot of families homeschooling their children simply because they believe that is the best thing for their kids. And so my younger two brothers actually have been homeschooled their entire academic careers, and I had to make the argument they're probably more social than I am, and of course that will vary from family to family, but I genuinely believe that a parent knows their child best and knows what they need more than anyone, and so I can't make that call for a family to say, hey, you shouldn't homeschool because of X, Y, and Z. I have a lot of friends here in Nashville who they homeschool. They love it. They absolutely love it. They didn't want anything to do with Governor Bill Lee's school choice bill that just got passed and signed into law. And I was like, that's great. If you don't want to do it, no problems at all. But when I go to the legislature, I'm fighting for every single family to make that own decision for their family. And
so it's about choice. It's about having opportunities and options. I just worry that people that have the resources are all going to put their kids in homeschool. And it's like, that's not going to fix our problem, guys. Like, that's not going to fix. We're still going to have public schools. And I don't want to just see the kids that are, have less resources be the ones that are still in public schools. Like, let's find a way to make this better for everybody. And I think that's exactly what dismantling the Department of Education and empowering the states will do. So I think that that's also part of the discussion. It's the people that don't have the resources. Like, let's find a way to make sure that they can still succeed. And you're a testament to that. And you're the best testament to that. So I appreciate you being outspoken about it and everything that you're trying to do. I mean, it's an inspirational story for so many. And just in closing, what is your message to the kids out there that don't feel like education is for them? That feel like, this whole school thing, it's not really for people like me.
Yeah, it's funny you ask it. I'm actually having conversations with my little brother about that now. And I will quote Senator Tim Scott that education is the closest thing to magic in America, a great education. And it may not seem important now, but the things that you learn in school, that process of breaking down things, being investigative and curious and all those things, you may not be in the classroom, but you will always be a student. And that's the way I try to live my life. That's exactly what I'm telling my brother now. And so it's not fun, just period, but that's also life. Like, wait till you become an adult, right? And so education will take you further than you could ever imagine. I mean, I was a kid who was in the schoolhouse and ended up at the White House, and now actively planning to be a resident for 8 years at the White House, like all these things. And it's because of my education. And if you're educated, you have a great education, you're able to go out and accomplish whatever you want. And when you don't, you're severely limited. And I lived in a neighborhood of kids who were severely limited because they dropped out of school in the 5th grade, in the 6th grade, joining gangs and dealing drugs because that was the only option for them. They had better support in a gang than from the school administration. And I understand that. I get that, but that's not the path forward long term. We don't want our society turning down that road. And so get your education, be committed, and go out and change the world.
Yeah, and parents out there, you do have a choice. And there are several states that are stepping up for that, and your president's stepping up for that as well. Thank you so much for being an outspoken voice and for taking the arrows when they come, but also being a person in the fight, because it's what's needed. And your story really inspires people. And it's obviously very personal for you, which I think makes it even better. So thank you so much for being here. We're happy to have you in Tennessee.
Yes.
And good luck to you in the future. I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of you over the next few years.
Yeah, appreciate it, Tommy. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. All right, folks, that does it for this very special education episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. I'll catch you right back here Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel to watch this episode and all episodes. Of course, that's at Tomi Lahren is Fearless on YouTube. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.